replace at time of application. Just let us know which ones you will need. Budget information, the Canada Common CV validated for NSHRF. We joined the Common CV last year, or end of last year. This is our first year requiring the NSHRF validation. The CCV is live now. You can get to it through our website. If you have any questions at all or any difficulties at all, in that handout about the CCV is the contact information for Sean Ward. He's happy to answer any of your questions or to find the answer if he doesn't know it. And as I said, we will be having frequently asked questions posted on the website shortly. He's just building up the volume of questions before he starts posting.
Meredith, people in CIHR are more familiar with CCV.
Yep.
People in CHRP and NSERC may not have
so
an
much.
idea what it is at all. So
Sure.
maybe you just give the context of that.
Certainly. The Canada Common CV is a project of a number of the funding agencies across Canada. More and more agencies are coming on board as time goes on. It's an effort at getting the common elements of your CV, those things that every agency wants to have, entered once and updated once and automatically for all agencies that you might be applying to. So as more agencies get on board, the common elements of the CV are expanding. So you're going to have to update less and less as more of us get on board here. So maybe once a year, go in, enter your most recent funding. Things like your contact information, the awards you hold, your appointments, any awards and distinctions, a lot of that goes into the common section. So once you've entered it, you're basically done. You select then which agency you're making a particular application to. In our case, you'd be clicking NSHRF. And then there's a couple of elements that we require that are unique to NSHRF. They're really similar to those that are required by CIHR. We ask for a little less information on some areas than they do. So if you've done a CIHR one, you can probably cut and paste and be quite quickly finished, the NSHRF version. It's important to note that if you have students and they have not done one of these before, please ask them to start as soon as you know they want to apply. They take a lot longer than most faculty to complete the CCV. They have a lot more problems and they need a lot more support. Sean's happy to help them in addition to whatever support you can provide. But they need to start early because we've had students last year that started the day that the application was due and were not able to complete in time. That wasn't a pretty phone call, let me tell you. Okay, so in addition to this information, health research project applicants, so these are people in the first 5-year category, are required to complete a mentorship page. This mentorship page is intended to reflect a relationship that you must build with a more established or senior researcher. And this doesn't mean that you don't have the skills that you need to make this application. This means that to navigate certain newer areas, you may benefit from someone's experience. So if you're in the first 5 years after receiving your PhD, but you've had an academic appointment and have been applying for funding for 20 years, you may feel that this doesn't really work for you. And what we would suggest is look at it as an opportunity to acquire a skill set that you don't particularly have yourself. So if you have an interest in research but you haven't worked with school boards or within a school system, for example, find a mentor who has done a lot of research in the school system and use their experience to help you navigate all the additional ethics approvals that are required in working in one of the school districts. That kind of thing is perfectly acceptable.
Does your mentor need to be Nova Scotian?
I don't recall. I'll have to look in the guidelines for that one for you. I manage the capacity program, so I don't actually manage this program. I'm pretty familiar with all of the details of the requirements. I don't recall that one, so I'll check it for you before we leave. Collaborative health research project. The particular need there, the unique section there, is to discuss team roles. So as that is a collaborative project with a community representative, a community organization, we want to make sure it's an authentic partnership. We really want to see that the community organization is involved in the project, not just signed on. So we want you to describe who's doing what, when, where, and why, and how the team is going to complete the research project. I wanted to highlight for you the things that were new this year within these grants, because these are grants that have been established for some time. The main new thing is the dates for registration and application. They're a little earlier in the year than they have been previously. As we talked about, the CCV for NSHRF is new this year. The other thing that is new is the number of copies that we're requiring. It's gone up slightly. So we're looking for your original application plus 8 photocopies of that application. And with collaborative projects, that's original plus 9. And in addition, 1 electronic copy of your application. That should be submitted on CD. The reasoning for these things, collaborative grants have additional reviewers. They have reviewers that are looking at the application specifically for the quality of the collaboration. These are community development experts that we bring in specifically to look at these projects, so we need a couple of extra copies there. The reasoning behind the CD, in the next few years, we're moving towards electronic submission. This is a first step for us in using an electronic copy of your application to start moving it through our administrative processes. So we're going to start testing things out now so that we're all much happier with the end result. Final point, ineligible applications will no longer be returned to applicants. They'll be destroyed at NSHRF. Anybody who is ineligible will, of course, be notified and informed as to why. Go ahead, Steve.
How is eligibility decided?
The eligibility criteria are all outlined in the competition requirements. Things like, you're required to have a certain number of copies would be an eligibility point. You're required to have a CCV for an SHRF for any academic applicant. That's an eligibility point. You're required to complete all the sections of the application. That's an eligibility point. You need to have an appointment at a Nova Scotia Health Research Institution, Center, or hospital. That's an eligibility point. So if you don't meet the criteria for your particular target application, then you would be ineligible. Is that what you're...
Who makes the decision?
We have outlined all the eligibility criteria in the competition requirements. We do a checklist when the applications are received at NSHRF. That's checked by generally 2 staff and the manager. So NSHRF determines eligibility.
Is the subject matter of the application a factor in eligibility?
No. Only in that, so for collaborative project, we have to see on your team that there is a community partner. So if we have a question about whether that really fits our definition of community, you might take that as being about content rather than eligibility criteria, but I see that as a central point of eligibility, so no, it's about the content.
On this point, I imagine a pretty important eligibility criteria for somebody more than 5 years into their research position, but feel that they are, moved into health where previously they had not. Those discussions should be had beforehand.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's in fact a requirement that if you're applying under that transition rule, that you speak with the program manager. She will outline for you in more detail what we need to identify that point. So we need a letter from you indicating how you're transitioning into health research. And I believe that a copy of your CCV for NSHRF is also required at that point. That's reviewed by NSHRF staff, and then we inform you about the eligibility there. If we would go into dialogue if we had any concerns.
It's interesting. I'm not sure how familiar you are with this, but if somebody was basically an insert-oriented person, but worked on an area that then said, well, although I've looked at this from a non-human biological aspect, there really is a human health component to this. Is that the sort of thing that would
Yeah.
make it eligible, or just?
It can be.
Yeah, it can.
It has to be a genuine, I don't mean genuine, I mean, it has to be a concentrated shift in your career focus.